Welcome to this edition of Security and Compliance Weekly. We are very excited to have back on the show today Mr. John Threat. He was on the show, I think, back in February, episode 62, if I'm not mistaken, and he was telling us about his origin story of being an OG hacker back in the early days of the internet and computing and networking, all those things. He actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and he's said he wanted to voice some of his concerns about sort of the state of cybersecurity today, the state of the industry, how nobody seems to think like a hacker anymore. And so here we are. We invited him back on the show. I'm looking forward to hearing what John's take is on the state of the industry. And everybody else has, I'm sure, got some things to add. So, and also, please, if you want to join us on the Discord server and add questions and comments, we'll be happy to try to pull them into the air as well. So let's have a conversation with John Threat. Join us as we continue our journey of tearing down silos and building bridges on Security and Compliance Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. And now, it's the show that bridges the requirements of regulations, compliance, and privacy with those of security. Your trusted source for complying with various mandates, building effective programs, and current compliance news. It's time for Security and Compliance Weekly.
Welcome to episode 97 of Security and Compliance Weekly, recorded on November 30th, 2021. I am your host, Mr. Jeff Mann, and joining me today are my esteemed co-host, Ms. Kat Valentine, Ms. Johanna Baum, and Mr. Frederick Lee. Welcome, everyone.
Hola.
Just have one announcement before we jump into our topic and guest spot for today. And along the lines of topics and guests, if you have any ideas or suggestions for a specific guest that you'd like us to talk to or a topic you'd like us to cover on this or any of our shows, you can submit your suggestions by going to securityweekly.com/guests. You will find there a form, fill it out, we review it. We'll get back to you if we like your idea and let you know how to proceed from there. Alrighty, we are winding down on the year. Today is the last day of the fiscal year for my company, Online Business Systems. So it's like New Year's Eve, only a month early for me. Anyway, it just means management's distracted doing a lot of numbers and everything. So they're probably not watching today. Not that I'd say anything disparaging or anything like that. But I do want to welcome back John Threat to the show. John, welcome.
Hi. Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. I was listening to your segment from back in February, and just to sort of refresh my memory of what we had talked about and things that we had covered. And one of the obvious things is, because you've been on the show already, we've already asked you the hot seat question. So I wanted to ask you a different question just to start off, just as an icebreaker question. But what is your favorite hacker movie?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it's Sneakers. It's a cross between Sneakers and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Ooh. Well, I was hoping you'd say Sneakers, and Paul, if you're listening, that's another one from my leaderboard.
Sneakers is the right answer.
Series,
Sneakers is the right answer.
I need to follow up on that. They were developing it as a TV series. I mean, Sneakers was dope. I actually have never seen Hackers, even though, did I mention Hackers the last time? So, and when they were filming so first of all, Hackers is like semi-based on the hacker group I was in. Right. I didn't get any money for it. In fact, some people I know talked to the writer and they didn't get any money. And then when I got out of jail, the day I got out of jail, I come onto the train platform and I look across in the G train station in Brooklyn, and they were filming Hackers. And there I was like watching a movie that was loosely based, including some hacker names from our group. there. So
I think are you represented in the movie Hackers? Having not
seen
seen it,
Lord Nightcon is supposed to be. I've never seen it. I've only read the script and stuff, and it's like based on our group. And it's funny. Somebody was asking me. I was trying to find this hacker today from back in the day, and it came up in discussion that our group was like the only polyglot group in the whole hacker sphere at that time. That was like it had like different ethnicities from different continents, and also we had women in our group, and I think that besides all the oddities, besides MOD, the hacker, one of the hacker groups I was in, right. That was like a standout point, which at the time when it happened, everyone looked at as a negative, unfortunately, or pointed it out. I mean, some of those same people now would be embarrassed that they pointed it out in a negative light, but turned out to be extra dope historically that we had all these great members.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of cool when you look back on it, and unfortunately, even somewhat pervasive still today is the lack of diversity that we sometimes find in our community. I don't know if that's what ground you want to cover today, but I was just going to let you open it up with what's been triggering you lately, John.
Let's go back to the movie real quick. So Sneakers is your favorite. The rest of the panel, though. Sorry, I just want to know.
Sneakers all day, every day. Sneakers is always the right answer.
Nice.
I'm still trying to get that phone number from Sneakers T.
Nice.
Kat, how about you?
Definitely, I was down with both of the movies that you suggested. You should watch Hackers at some point, though. It's pretty funny.
Gotcha. I'll check it out. I mean, I know I had the script and everything. Like I'm saying, somebody I know talked to them. I literally had the script. It's just painful to come out of jail and see that. And they're like,
no, totally. But maybe enough time has passed that you could watch it and laugh at it, because it is pretty hilarious, especially in 2021.
Gotcha. I will check it out one day and get fucked up.
All right, Joe, let us know a little about yourself. What's your favorite hacker movie?
Yeah, I'm the same with Sneakers. I actually watched it with my dad, what feels like a million years ago. So I'm on board with that one.
That's kind of because it came out a million years ago.
Well, I think one of the things about
dating myself.
I think one of the things that Sneakers is great is because, and this doesn't really exist, right? A lot of times they roll everything into one person, into a super hacker who, also can fight and everything and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And, has all these different skills. That might be me, actually, since I do know how to ride motorcycles. But anyway, that's besides the point. The main thing is that it's probably more congruent to reality that a lot of times groups form with different strengths within the group. And it's this polyglot group of people that share ideas, almost like in the modern day DAO situation. Those hacker groups sort of come together. And I think Sneakers represents that, both in terms of age, skills, and, I think that is great, the mentorship. And that's missing in other movies where it's just about, one person is some sort of mega hacker and there's nothing they don't have to reference anything so I think that's what's great about it. And then I think I like, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because for me, I definitely, have dipped into before in one epoch of my life, I definitely lived as more of a dirty cyberpunk, surviving on just my hacker wits and stuff. So, and I think that exists in the world too. And I love, there's not enough of those stories. A lot of it, like I said, unfortunately, there's so many fucking great stories out there and stuff, but a lot of times, they get boiled down into tropes that are really fucking boring.
If only there was some podcast that could put together a series of hacker stories or the untold stories. Oh, wait, there is one. Darknet Diaries. Have you been on Darknet Diaries?
No. I think I've heard about it. It's only so many hours in a day. I'll check it out though.
We need to get you on so you can tell your story on there. We know some people. We'll make sure you connect. Although they're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn. I'm not sure how to make that alignment, but we'll figure it out. You were saying, John? I'm sorry. What is triggering?
Oh yeah, no. I think that is. I think that's a I think in the landscape it's just a lot of stories, and I think it's been hard for them to translate the stories. The other thing too about the story thing, which I know intimately since part of my career has delved into film and television and in pitching shows, is that embarrassingly enough, you're not going to believe this. You're going to know it once I say it. A lot of producers who have a big name and do shows, when they pitch a hacker show, they feel like they know everything about hacking already. So they don't actually want to collaborate with any hackers and stuff. So I think it's funny. That's like a common problem, that they feel like they know everything from just reading a few Wired magazine articles. And like I said, then it just reverts to, to a trope that feels comfortable. And ultimately that winds up being boring because it's not really reality. There's so much texture in the underground and in the, in the myriad of different, hacking, security breaches and hacking and even the intangible hacking, and also obviously nation state stuff too, which is also ongoing and incredible in its evolution. Oh, and don't forget crypto too, which is also a whole realm.
And by crypto, you mean, of course, cryptography and encryption, not that other thing, right?
No, I mean like cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I think that's incredibly. I know that's
what you meant.
And I think that has evolved into a whole industry, a whole security industry in itself. I think it's interesting. I think a lot of those people are really smart and sharp. And, I think one of my laments is that I think a lot of old school hackers actually don't like blockchain. They still think it's like tulips or a database. Might be, but that's not the point. The point is that it's, there's a culture around it and a lot of, there's a lot of money, data, and other assets being put on the blockchain that are at stake. And it's, it's high stakes and it's very exciting and it's international in scope. So I don't know. It's just funny to talk to some people who are like, I don't even fuck with that. And you're like, yo, this is the hottest shit out, including on the hacker side. And I do understand a lot of the technology behind it or coding. That's a lot to jump into if you want to get into like Rust or Solidity or the other various technologies and stuff. But it's a lot to explore and hammer away at. And like I said, there already has been some amazing incidents.
Well, I don't want to go that route, at least not on this show. I do think it's interesting that, we've started out talking about, favorite hacker movie and sort of the personas of hackers back in the day, the way they've been portrayed, the way they really are, and just even talking about how there's so many stories out there, and yet they often get turned into tropes. When you first approached me about, I want to get back on the show and let's talk about how there's something missing, there's something going on. It's like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something to the effect of, it's like too many people aren't thinking like a hacker anymore, or we've lost something in terms of sort of the hacker mentality, hacker methodology. What are your thoughts?
Right. So actually, I was trying to lead in with the crypto talk because those guys are impressive.
Oh, well, then do that then.
But
I was trying to avoid crypto.
Oh, no, we're going to avoid it. I just was dovetailing that. I think that a lot of those guys are on the cutting edge on the people who are evolving their security skills in that space. So one of the things is because it's raw. So on the other side of it, let me start by saying, of course, the expansion of all things, digital, everything from IoT to the web to devices, phones, computers, televisions, everything, refrigerators, light switches. I think, Web 2, Web 3, the myriad, it just has increased exponentially. Gaming, streaming, blah, blah. The depth is incredible. Metaverse. I think, of course, you're going to need to hire as many security people as possible to fulfill roles. The thing is, and it's, this is stuff is not, that part I'm not treading new ground on. What I wanted to mention, though, is that unfortunately in doing so, so many people don't really have a grasp of the hacker situational awareness. But what I mean by that is, like, for instance, in the interplay of people who come up through actually like hacking, right? A lot of times, both friendly and not friendly, one of the biggest shames is getting hacked. Like, if you wind up getting hacked, or one of the biggest calls is hacking other people. And, of course, there's competitions and stuff like that, but there's an innate sense of the real embarrassment when you either get hacked or you hack someone, that gives you a sort of pride and situational awareness about the security of either your data or the data you're working on or working with. And that might seem like an abstract concept, but I do feel like I see that lacking in a lot of people coming through the security mill. Like, it is very hard to teach that. And it's something, it's not like innate, but like if you come into it without the idea of that awareness about the data, you wind up, not missing the mark, I think. And then to give examples, obviously, since the last time we talked, there's been huge breaches. I would even say there's been some breaches I would consider some of the biggest hacks in history took place. And I think about how the one thing I think that is really, really why I was going to speak about this and formulating my thoughts on this is that not only were these intrusions huge, but a huge difference is that they were inside the computers and systems for a long ass time, which is something I like to do. But that being said, it is amazing that it could go on that long with a full staff or a company on Overwatch. So something's wrong if we went from like, oh, there was an intrusion, it was big, but they caught it within 2-3 days or a week, to like 6 months, 1 year, full exposure, doing whatever they wanted to do at will, and only caught because there was, an advisory, and then they went over everything. Or they dumped the data, when they felt like it. I think something changed to me in the air that allowed for that to happen. And I think one aspect of it is this ethereal thought about how do you teach someone true hacker awareness to take that sort of interest in that, your name is on the line, or in the sense of being aware of the thing, like a piece of software or or a service isn't enough. You have to have awareness about what's going on in your systems enough to know that when something is wrong or changed, or even just take a look or have that sense like, yo, something's not right, and take a look. I think that is a missing element. I think that defines the difference between people who are really amazing and have an amazing team, and people who have, a team that does his job really well till they don't. And then you realize, oh shit, nobody was paying attention at all.
So I'm intrigued about several things, just based on what you're saying. One thing is, because I live in the compliance world, and PCI is almost its own beast, despite the fact that it supposedly lives within this community. I've talked for the last couple of years about how the paradigm of the attacker has changed. How it used to be back in the early days that it was all about getting shell access, getting root on servers, entrenching yourself, finding ways to, we have language for it now, pivoting and lateral movement and stuff like that. But the general thinking of the early days was break in, search until you find the mother lode of data that you want to steal, and then figure out how to get it out. Whereas the breaches that have impacted at least the PCI space, the retail payment space, the last couple years, have been more sort of automated attacks, malware attacks, things that have enabled hackers not necessarily to get in and entrench themselves, but to be able to exfiltrate data over time at a trickle. I'm intrigued that you're suggesting some of the latest breaches, some of these big breaches, the nature of them hadn't changed from the old days. It was still somebody got in and was there for a long time and learned the environment and found out what was the best thing to steal and the best way to do it and that type of thing. I'm tempted to say you don't see a lot of that anymore. And I would temper that by saying at least the focus doesn't seem to be on that. Isn't the only problem these days ransomware? Isn't that what companies are supposed to worry about?
They should be worried about ransomware. It's amazing the evolution of it and how successful they have been in getting people to wind up locking their systems up. It's
right.
And I think it also once again points to, and believe me, I do see companies responding to it strongly, right? I think they have moved very strongly to find partners to, make sure it doesn't happen again. But obviously,
right.
Everybody got caught, stung. A lot of places had no idea. And of course, this is, like I said, just to temper it. Of course, if you have it's easy to say that running, a small organization and stuff. But, there are large organizations that haven't been stung by it. But, it can be hard to manage everybody effectively. And if you don't take security seriously or even stay up on the different vectors, obviously, all it takes is one person to wind up getting the whole organization stung with ransomware. I think that is, there's a lot of reasons for that. But obviously we're just trying to spitball, ideas from a high cliff view of like what could be done to sort of alleviate some of those things. And I think part of it is definitely that a lot of people, as I mentioned, don't really have a good, hacker awareness. I think it's interesting that I've met people, just who on the street who are more like concerned about their personal privacy and data protection than some of the security people I've met, who are in charge of data. Like, what? Like, I wish you had this guy's sort of mentality. Not necessarily to be paranoid, but like I think, I do think to some extent, there's obviously, we talked about this before, there's an extreme lack of education in like, I think this is a hard thing to find money for is, just to, because there's several barriers in terms of like just education of like young people in protecting their personal data. So if they do evolve eventually to a security role, they already have some sort of sense of the protection of it. But I do think in general, like, I feel like there's like, there's not in a way, I'm almost going to say like, and this is, you can't control, is like, if somebody feels it's just their job, I think that's the difference between like old school hackers. Not when I say old school, I should actually just say hackers in general, is that when they do evolve to a security role, for them, it's personal if they get hacked. Whereas I'm not sure if that's instilled in people who, who come into it more because it has a high paycheck rather than necessarily a love or of defense of the data they've been put in charge of. If that seems, that's a pretty easy conclusion, but my goal is to figure out how to present ideas to change that thinking.
JT, you kind of touched on one of the things that was kind of, at least my controversial theory, which is I think money in the industry has actually changed things for people in the industry. There are those who are like, it used to be that the knowledge itself was the reward. Like, hey, what you learn, like, effectively playing the game was the reward. Now the reward is how big is the paycheck you can get. And so are you even incentivized to even care about, either, exploring, security even further, learning about things outside of what is your immediate job, and even more so even caring about whether or not you actually get popped. It's like now, you can get popped and you still get a job. You just walk across the street, you still actually get the same job, and it doesn't really matter. I'm kind of curious, like, how do you feel like effectively the corporatization of security, how that actually has changed the profile of security practitioners?
Take it
Right,
out of
that's
security.
Sorry.
You don't even have to just, restrict it to security. There's just a general level of apathy altogether with people in their jobs. I mean, I don't think they're really feeling associated or responsible, or like you're saying, like I should feel more responsible for the data that I control and this level of protection that they're supposed to have just being a good security practitioner. I don't think they give a shit. I mean, they just keep getting a paycheck, so they have a moderate level of care. But I mean, I think it's across the board for almost every position that there's just that, the last several years. I mean, when we talk about, sneakers and what we used to do, I think we just grew up in an era where we wanted that intellectual curiosity. We're digging because we liked it. It was fun. We wanted to learn more and evolve. It's just not the same mentality now. I mean, it is something that they do, and they're going to, most people are doing it for the minimum amount of effort possible to still get that same maximum paycheck. As soon as that shifts, I'm just going to go get a job somewhere else and do the same thing. Like, why do I have to care? Which sounds horrible. I mean, we should shift to how are we going to make this better? But I think that's just kind of the general law of the land now. I don't love it. I hate that. But that's what it feels like.
Agreed, 100%. I think that, so one of the questions is how do what ideas could change that? I mean, I do think, that maybe everyone, they're going to kill me for saying they're over incentivized. I know it's the desire for someone to do security for all these everywhere is high, and they should get people, but also maybe to the point where it's over incentivized. Far be it from me to say they should cut anyone's money, but I do think, to some extent, there has to be some ideas about that. Because I mean, that both of what you said, I mean, that's exactly what's in my head too. Like it makes me wonder talking to people. And then like one of the things I love to do is I love to go on Clubhouse into computer security rooms. And, it's nice that everybody's helping each other, but I also hear everybody sort of helping each other get security jobs, and they haven't put any time into the actual practice of it. You know what I mean? They just enough to get the test done, or, you know what I mean? Or pass the resume test. But that also said, I've also seen a lot of people, and it's easy to dump on Clubhouse because it is a home of a lot of people. It's a good place for non-experts to go to gain an audience. I've gone on there, and I don't want to say any names, but I've definitely gone in rooms and trolled a little bit just to see what they were thinking. And man, there was some people with huge audiences, and man, they really had bad ideas about computer security. Yeah, I won't expose anybody directly, but it's one of my favorite pastimes.
Kat, do you have any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I just was listening or whatever, and I'm thinking about it. And I'm kind of the mind, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I'm kind of the mindset, correct. We're about the same age, and I think that we came up in the same kind of 90s genre. And I'm kind of thinking like there is a difference, right, between hackers that came from that time. I'm wondering if it's a time capsule kind of thing, because at that time, we didn't have things like jobs and careers that we could go for. The only incentive was curiosity or getting somebody, like kind of a deal. And there wasn't too many of those jobs. That wasn't really a recognized field. It might be the same, like synonymous with an engineer, just your typical engineer who's one's really, really great and has been doing it since they were 6. versus somebody that went to school for it, kind of thing. Maybe that's something that can't be taught. Maybe an entire culture can't be taught. That's kind of where my thoughts are going right now, but I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you're saying is enlightening. I think that all right. The only thing I would say is that I do think culture can be taught. I think that got excised at a certain point because once it became, it just wasn't, I mean, I observed people, training people, even though that wasn't ever my forte. It's not training people per se, at least not in, you know what I mean? In the mill sort of way. I've seen that. I've looked at the documents. I review them time to time. Obviously, I know a lot of people who do security, full time, all the time. And, listen, there's a lot of money to be made in it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to, cut anybody's knowledge on that. I think what I'm trying to say is that, I think what could be added to it is these ideas. I do think, culture could be taught. It's just, it's not included in those briefings. I think some of them are wrong in the sense that it does allow people to just rely on, products and services and, some dings.
Yeah.
I'm
almost kind of the mindset though that I'm kind of the mindset that it's like almost who you are. So how I came into the hacking culture was I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old runaway, bad household and all that kind of stuff. And I came into phone freaking first because I needed free phone calls from payphones because I had a beeper and I was selling weed and that was how I was making money, to be really honest about it. And so I fell in with, some folks that could teach me that stuff, and it was interesting, but that was kind of my way of getting into this whole world, which then later became, as I grew up, a whole career, And so in my mind, I kind of think of it more like some people have that bug. Maybe some people came from some sort of struggle. Maybe some people came from some sort of intellectual curiosity, maybe not necessarily with that particular struggle, but it seems like it's almost an attitude,
All right. So first, cheers to you for living the
Thanks.
life. I appreciate your origin story a lot. I didn't know that, and I'd love to know more. So one of the things, though, is hitting upon that is imagination, right? One of the most telling things in the 9/11 report was the failure of imagination. Imagination is super important. It's how we got here. It's how we have all the things, how we make things, how we do things. It's that imagination. Even as a child, there's nothing better than a child with unrestricted imagination. And there's nothing worse than a child who is robbed of their imagination. What I do think is, just building on that, is the idea of that creative imagination is a failure completely, both in teaching comp security as well as inside of organizations. I can't speak to all organizations. I know, I'm connected to some people who, their shit is fucking tight. Just want to give props to the people whose shit is tight. They run a tight fucking ship. Just want to give the props to that, because I do feel like sometimes we don't take a minute to recognize what's really good. Right. Now, it's obvious not every organization can replicate that, but it's that creative imagination that is missing, both being taught, and that's probably true in a lot of places, which, by the way, once again, I just want to reel back to the DAO thing. I know it's a buzzword, but distributed autonomous organizations, as people set it up, what's interesting is that they celebrate creative imagination within the group and try to reward it and incentivize it within it, both using programmatic tools as well as just good faith between everybody in a very game theory 3-3 sort of way. But that being said, all right, that's not there yet for security. But how does one get there to do it? I mean, I'd love to hear just spitballing ideas right now.
I got an idea, and it's actually partially inspired by Kat's origin story, your origin story. I think a lot of us, for lack of a better word, like older people in the community. I think one of the things that actually sparked like some of the things that you talk about, JT, was people using these skills for their personal life, right? Like there was a need that Kat had, there was a need that you had, there was a need that I had when we actually got into security. That wasn't about money. Well, I mean, it was, but not really, right? It was about like some kind of access, some kind of freedom, some kind of change to your personal life. And the security skills were actually a tool that you had that actually helped you with that. Had nothing to do with a job. Whereas I think now people are kind of picking up the skills just to get a job, right? It has nothing to do with like with their personal life or anything that they actually are living and breathing. And and kind of like you were saying when you met that person on the street who was like just super hyper aware about their personal privacy, what they actually want to do with their data. They had some kind of personal story. They had something in their life that made that important to them. And I wonder if there are other things that we should be pushing for. And I know we talked a little bit about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, et cetera. When you think about like Silk Road and some of those things, at the end of the day, that was fundamentally people actually just had a need and they were actually trying to solve that. And so they were thinking, outside the box. And when I think about creativity and imagination, restriction helps push that. Like, hey, there are certain laws, there are certain things, there's certain, societal, cultural norms or whatever that people are feeling confined by. So they're pushing and finding other avenues, being creative. And I feel like some of that's actually missing from the security community now.
I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'll actually say something too, with regards to my origin story. That's just like some stuff that happened when I was 14, 15, 16. But I'll also say this, it wasn't my first time messing with computers or phones. My father in the 80s, he definitely had like a Tandy 1000 that he gave me and a TI 99. And I also they had like a home business and I had my own phone line since I was 8. And so I was messing around back then, but then when it came down to need 14, 15, 16, I had some sort of, okay, if I connect with some people, I can maybe get some phone calls for free. And while I'm on this street by this payphone, maybe I can hit up an AT&T conf and like be entertained for a couple of hours. But I would also argue that because you presented the argument that was kind of out of necessity. It was also out of intellectual curiosity as well. I'll say that for myself. But with people coming into, maybe younger people coming into the field, maybe getting a job in this field, I've seen it a lot of times where that is their necessity. They're like, you know what? I have a little bit of skills with computers, and I've been in tech support or an admin or something like that for a little bit. Maybe I can up this to better my life situation. And I would argue that might be a very hacker mindset getting into the field.
It is. And I'm not going to hate on that at all. Like I am one of those annoying people on Twitter and I love following all these people. It's like, hey, I'm trying to get this money. I'm trying to get this bag. This is what I want to do. This is what the paychecks look like in cybersecurity. I am here for that. I'm not hating on anybody trying to get paid. But I do think that because some of the resources that they're using are resources from commoditized security, that maybe some of their avenues aren't as broad as some of the things, people actually maybe came up earlier where the commoditization of security just didn't exist. So people literally just making up as they went along, right? And so I think some of that's actually kind of missing, maybe actually the environmental pressure for people to actually be creative, right? Like right now, the environmental pressure is like, hey, get the cert, get the paycheck, which is awesome. But it only means that you're just learning the stuff in that book or the stuff related to that. And that's how you end up in the situations where somebody's like, hey, you know what? I don't even know what that server is. I don't even know. I don't even, they don't even know some of the fundamentals about maybe, some of the things that we kind of take for granted now. because all they're being taught is, hey, how do you do the search in Splunk? Hey, how do you get this scan set up? How do you do X, Y, and Z? And I'm not hating on any of that, but it is, I think, to some extent, it's kind of limited some of the cultural aspects. When I think about security and I think about hackers, it's all about kind of that aggressive that aggressive hunt for knowledge, right? And you can get paid without trying to learn anything else except for what's on paper, right?
Right. The checklist. By the way.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Does it still power up?
Yeah, it does.
And does it run Windows ME?
No, I haven't. I don't have anything modded on it. I just love it raw.
Cool.
I didn't use that. I didn't use that from my. I got this post. I don't know. I never stopped hacking, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I didn't use this for. I got this way after, but it works.
Cool. Hey, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and keep this discussion going. So don't go away. We'll be right back.